All right, welcome to lesson number 6 with VP Culture. And this is the Culture Science unit where we're trying to get everyone to build cultures based on valuing people. So this lesson specifically is going to be culture is hard work. So this is one of the key elements. What I want you to do is be able to succeed in building your culture. And one of the success methodologies is knowing what you're getting into. You're looking at 3 to 5 years of hard work to get this all done and solid. But initially, there's going to be a curve that we're going to look at that throws a lot of companies off their change efforts, not only change efforts to change their culture, but change efforts to change just about anything in your organization. So let's dive into these secrets and see what's going on. All right. So what we're looking at is 70% of change efforts fail, unfortunately, according to McKinsey research. But we want you to be in this 30% category. So pay close attention to the differentiators that make this 30% category the winners in the change efforts. These principles are going to be critical. So here are some of the 3 critical change effort elements that you need to have. The first one we've already been talking about, how VP culture changes your intrinsic motivations, how it changes people. So you're giving people a story about how life is going to be changed by this effort. So sometimes it could be a crisis, we're going to go out of business, but VP culture is its own built-in change story. And that's why we start there. It motivates all people, and it's a great way to start with a change story. So that's the first critical element in any great change effort that you need to have. And then you need focused time. What we find is that people over time need 10 times more communication than most executives think they need. So you have to communicate again and again and again and again. You have to focus the minds of the people in your teams on these efforts. A one-time all-hands meeting and with a lot of rah-rah is not going to make a change effort, nor sending out an email once a month is not going to make a change effort. You need to have at least weekly focused time that you're dedicating to whatever change effort you're doing. So those are 2 critical elements that you need to have. And this third one is pretty curious. It's called the capabilities trap. And when I was studying at MIT, this was one of the most critical elements that they brought out again and again that you have to watch out for, this capabilities trap. And this was brought up by 2 researchers called Reppening and Sturman. And they were they wrote a seminal paper about this that exposed how company after company gets stuck in the capabilities trap and can't get their way through to the other side. It's a place in your change efforts where your change efforts stall, and people don't realize that it's stalled, and they can't get through the capabilities trap. So what is the capabilities trap going to lead us to? What is it exactly? Well, it looks like this. Most people, when they need to change, something's going wrong. That change effort, that change story has kicked in. And so what do? They work harder. They work faster. They put in more effort. So this line represents effort and performance. So usually you throw everybody at the problem and they're still vigorous and they start to perform, and performance goes up because everyone's working harder, right? But over time, what happens? It goes down and down and down and down and down. And not only because they're getting tired, but because you're just using this one methodology of throwing more work at a situation. You're not innovating, learning, and overcoming the problem. You're not changing. You're just doing the same thing with more effort. Okay, so performance takes a big bump and then it goes down. That's one critical thing. But this is what you're doing long term. You're using this overtime strategy. You're spending late nights working on the piles of work that has piled up, and you're spending less and less time on improvement and maintenance of what should be happening. You're not having those team meetings. We don't have time for the team meetings. We don't have time for this change effort. We got too much to do. So you end up spending more time on working harder overtime and less and less and less time on improvement. Okay? So what's the next thing that goes down? As we mentioned earlier, your capabilities eventually start to drop and go down. Meaning, if you're not spending that time on improvement, you're going to plateau at first, and then new software is going to come out. New techniques are going to come out. The market is going to shift. And your capability is going to go down while everyone's working harder to try to keep up with the same amount of material. It's like your boat is springing leaks and you're sending more people down in the boat to keep bailing the water out. Well, sure, the boat's still going forward, but you've got 10 people down in the hole bailing the water out all the time. And then you got to send one of your other top workers down there to go bail out the water rather than pulling into the port, fixing the problem, doing change efforts, improving things. So what does it look like to take the alternative strategy? Instead of working harder, let's start working smarter. So here is the capabilities trap. So we're going to try to do this change effort. We're going to try to do VP culture. We're going to say, hey, everybody, we're going to do VP culture. And here's what the trap is. Instead of that spike in performance that the work harder method has, this is the work different. And suddenly everyone's feeling cognitive dissonance and they can't get past this. They get stuck down in this little trough. And this is where we want you not to get stuck. We want you to get past this trough and get people up into this higher performance ratio over time, okay? So that's the important step, is getting past this particular little blip in the performance chart. And if you can do this over time, what happens is, the positive thing is you're going to spend more time on improvement because you're going to create a learning type culture that can learn, develop, iterate, improve. And each step of improvement saves them time and effort. So they're going to be spending less on the overtime thing, less working harder and more working smarter, because you're spending more time and becoming this virtuous circle of improvement. Just as we were talking about how serotonin and valuing people creates a virtuous circle of improvement and engagement with people, so too this system, when you engage it and get past this little curve in the beginning, you'll start to improve more and more over time. And you'll also see your capabilities continue to increase. So you'll be developing a culture that is a continuous improvement culture that will continue to improve over time. So can you see where this trap is happening here? It's happening right here. You see, look, we're doing better. And so everyone says, this work harder thing is working better. But they don't notice the gradual, over time, depreciation of their performance. And that's the significant problem. If you don't notice that this starts to turn down after you've hit that excited energy point, and if you don't notice that this curve here at the bottom is a dip, and this is where people bail out of the system. Like, oh, I told you this wasn't going to work. Look, we're all working slower. Look, this is all harder. And they start going back to their shortcuts. Let's just work harder using the old method. And this is where you get a lot of that confirmation bias of people going, yeah, I told you, change never works. Change isn't worth it. It just is harder. It's because you're here and people can't see the big picture. So you as a leader and you as a team need to really realize that this is coming. That when you start doing these VP culture things, you're not going to see miraculous overnight achievements. You say, why are we spending time on these meetings? We should be bailing out the ship down in the bilge instead of in the port, fixing the ship so it'll run even faster. We're putting new sails on so it goes faster. Okay, so that's the key point.